Good morning. It's time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com.
I like it. He did the .com part. Very nice.
And now your host, Mike Hewitt. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you. Listen, as most often, we have Jim Riley riding shotgun.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Hey, you've got his microphone on.
Well, that's the only way to hear my dulcet tones.
Listen to those pipes this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Who was this guy I was hearing on the radio?
Nothing like a touch of Ebola to really bring
I was
it
hearing
down.
this big market satellite talk show host on this morning in Muskegon. I about fell over backwards.
Very, very nice. Listen, on the line with us, we've got some special guests this morning. Darlene, Thompson, and Ken Ration. Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. Are you with me?
Good morning.
Maybe we do.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, good.
There we
go. I thought for a minute we had some technical difficulties. Ken, if I remember right, you've spent some time on the air before.
Yes, I did. We used to run a radio show. It's been a lot longer than I want to admit.
There you go. I don't think nothing's changed, so it's going to be okay. Listen,
we appreciate that.
I appreciate you two jumping in with us this morning. Just so listeners know, we were up to Mackinac Island this weekend for the Michigan Republican Leadership Conference. There was a bunch of people up there, but what Ken and Darlene do, you're volunteers, right? Is that right?
Yes.
And they're everywhere. I'm telling you, folks, I chair 2nd District. In every event that I go to, which is not enough, because I can't be everywhere, but everywhere I go, these two are there. Cameras in hand, and you've kind of become like the Michigan GOP family photographers.
Well, the
Documentarians. But all jokes aside, you two do an absolutely wonderful job. So for that, before we really get going, I just want to tell you thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that support.
Yeah, it's in one of the things that struck me, though, in why I decided I wanted to invite you two on, is that, two things. First off, I had people texting me that were not at the island, asking about a brawl and asking about a contentious spirit. And listen, I didn't see any of that. And in fact, actually the opposite. From my vantage point, it was probably the most revved up I have seen the state Republican Party grassroots volunteers in over a decade. And you were everywhere. You two were taking pictures from the governor all the way down. And do you share that? Is that how you saw it?
Oh, it was unbelievable. This is our 3rd conference, and it was just, I'm still reeling from all the excitement. We were at the Horns Bar,
right,
night of the so-called event. We had left before whatever transpired, but we've got a whole album up of all of. It was just a really, really fun time, and so that was just a few minutes of one night. Other than that, it was just a spectacular weekend.
Yeah, what was really interesting about that few minutes is it was actually a couple seconds. When I watched the video online that was posted everywhere from that establishment's security camera or surveillance cameras, it was literally a second. But the media, clearly with an agenda, painted it as something very, very different. I got to tell you, I didn't see any problems anywhere. But one of the things I really want to compliment you two on, along with your photography, and it's the other half of the reason I wanted to have you on this morning, is that the one thing I've really noticed about you two, and I admire, is that you can take a strong position on a particular issue, and it may be against a Democrat, it may be against a fellow Republican, and you take your position, whether it's contrary or an agreement. And if it's contrary, it's on that issue. It's not an enemy with that person. So,
are you kidding?
Yeah, so there may be 15 issues that we disagree on one, but we're not enemies. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, we've met so many wonderful Republicans going throughout the state. I cannot even begin to tell you. And it takes you from being enclosed into one area and one thought process into being exposed to everyone around the state and understanding the different point of views. And in our photos are about the event and who is there, not about our political stand at all. And
right.
It's not even about us, but who is there. So if we have political differences, we separate that.
In trouble.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you too, and that's why I really wanted to applaud it. It's adult-like, and it seems like, especially in social media, venues like that, and frankly with the mainstream media, if they have a difference, it's thermonuclear war. I mean, this person, I don't agree with them on X issue, and so they're just the rottenest, terriblest person in the world. And, the reality of it is that's just not true. And so I applaud you for your adult approach to politics, and especially how you're able to separate whatever your views are. In fact, I've known you for a long time, and I'm not even sure about them. That's the neat thing about you two. But you separated them out, and you do a very professional job with taking the pictures. But I think the key to the photos is it's an inclusionary step. And I think that's really foundational to make politics work, is to have people know and feel that they're being included.
Well, when we roll into the various events, I think about 18 of them over the weekend, you're correct. It brings the event home. There are a lot of folks who can't attend the island or can't attend all the events, and they use the photos that we document as a telescope to sort of view things.
Sure.
And it gives them a background view, because when you're in the middle of the event, you don't see everything going around you. And we try to be practical and move through the event to capture everybody who's there, and it's just amazing how folks appreciate their pictures.
It really is. And to your point, the folks that couldn't attend I've watched comments on Facebook, and it's really nice, especially when you've been involved for a long time. For me, going there, by the way, part of the magic of going is I get to see people. In fact, I ran into one person. It's kind of a short, funny story. I hadn't seen this guy in probably a decade, and so we run into each other, and we're both giving the long look like, holy mackerel, has a decade been hard on you? But I say that in good fun. But, it's amazing what 10 years will do. It was on the brighter note of that, it was great to see old friends. And that for me, is what the conference was about.
Oh, yeah, and people from all over the state, from northwest, south, east, everywhere. And then we had the presidential candidates and the Senate Republicans and the House Republicans, and it was just unbelievable. And the charm of the island in itself, at the Grand Hotel, everyone that put this event together, you full well know, putting together the events is a lot of hard work. They put months and months into organizing everything, and it just turned out fabulous.
I'm watching comments on Facebook while we're talking. You two have, all jokes aside, you two have a very, very large pool of people that like you a lot for the things that you do.
Oh, thank you very much. And when my husband started doing, he's always done photography, but he started doing the political events when we hooked up with our lieutenant governor, as a matter of fact, at one of his tent dinners. Was it
political event?
A political event,
sure.
And just taken it and gone from there, and it's just been wonderful.
On the island, did you have fairly good access to the candidates that were there?
Yes, we did, but you know what? We were, at least for me, we wanted to hit the events and get the people that took the time and effort to come up to the island. Ken got Ted Cruz's event and Rand Paul, and
yeah, we were able to get into Ted Cruz's event. He had an early morning event over at the local elementary school. Rand Paul had an afternoon event the same day at one of the local watering holes, the gatehouse. And we made the chairman's reception up on the porch of the Grand Hotel.
Very nice.
And by going to the various events, the candidates do show up. Our Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley had a late-night event, and John Kasich showed up late at night.
Right. It's funny that I'm glad you mentioned the Kasich thing because, and by the way, I don't have a dog in this hunt yet. I've not endorsed. I've literally, genuinely not decided. But in this avenue, or in this venue up there, I got to see some personal sides of people, and one of them was Kasich. I found myself walking down the street late at night, with him literally was just walking down Main Street talking to people.
Right.
And I don't think that that's really the impression that some folks, regardless of their politics, have or see of these candidates. It made it kind of nice. And you mentioned the Ted Cruz early morning one. I missed that one because I'd been at one the night before that was too late of one. So early morning didn't happen for me that day.
We did 17 events in 2 days, and that was a lot. But my main objective is the media is there for all the, like for Bush and for Kasich and for Carly.
Sure.
Tons of media, and their pictures are everywhere. But us regular folk, they're the ones that count most to us. And even we went into one place on Friday. Thursday night it was, and there was a gentleman there. We have differences of opinion, but he was there. We made sure he got in a group picture because, like I said, our photos aren't about us, but who attends the event. And it turned out really well. I mean, every event just was great. It was just unbelievable. We had even Mike Caldwell threw a little slice of pizza and Bill Shite's shish kebab. I mean, the list is just endless.
Right. Right, to your point though about the media with the candidates. First off, I absolutely agree with you on your view of grassroots. I think grassroots is what it is. The only thing that Tip O'Neill ever said in his whole life I agreed with is that all politics is local, and that's you and me.
Right.
But the other side of it though is that the review that the candidates received from the media. I thought by far and large was a little bit warped, at least from what I saw there. So I look at what you do from both of those two angles.
Well, it was the largest gathering on the island, and this was the 33rd leadership conference that's ever had grassroots Republicans on the island at one time. And it was a very excitable event. Everybody was very gung-ho, I should say. We are in a pivotal presidential election year. We're all working hard to re-implement what we want in government. Limited government, as less government as possible. And we have some very good candidates. 5 of the presidential candidates showed up. They articulate their message quite well. And you could see the excitement by the grassroots activists that were up there. We went to the Senate caucus on, was it Friday night? And everybody showed up. The senators will take time to talk to you, just like you were walking with John Kasich.
Sure.
It's an impersonal atmosphere, and it allows everybody to share ideas and converse, which is very important in a state as large as ours.
Did you folks have an opportunity to meet Rick Harrison from the Pawn Stars?
No, we missed that one.
Did you? I tell you, just because it's kind of, it goes to your point, Ken, that you get to see people from a different I don't know, venue or level. When I saw him, is not at all what I expected he would be. My very first impression of him was there was a young girl, maybe I'm guessing 7 years old or so, who was petite, and of course he's a pretty good sized fella. And they were doing picture time with him. He was there on behalf of Marco Rubio. That's what he was doing there. Just so everyone, the listeners know, evidently he's a Republican and he's a big Marco Rubio supporter. But when I ran into him, he was down on both knees to be at the same level of this young lady so her parents could get pictures of her. And I tell you that because I met some really genuine people there that I normally, frankly, first off, I wouldn't have considered him. But to your points and regarding Kasich and all of these people are real people.
Right. Well, and you're talking on the national level, and Ted Cruz is absolutely the same way. We've been able to meet and get to know Ted Cruz through the last couple of years. But I will tell you, and that's true of our state reps and our senators. You meet these, and our governor and our lieutenant governor. It's through taking these photos, and we get to know these people on a personal level. they get attacked viciously, and most of them don't deserve the heart. You know, we differ politically. They know where we stand, but when we take our photos, it's a lot of fun, and you get to know them, their wives, their children, and they have families and big hearts, and these are our party leaders, and it's just incredible.
What do you two say? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, so if you want to not answer, it's okay. But there, especially when you're in venues like Facebook, there are people that I refer to as purists that say, okay, we don't like what Governor Snyder did on X, Y, and Z, and yet they'll look to folks like you and probably myself. If we spend some time with them or acknowledge that there are other things that we agree with them on, we're immediately painted as sellouts and rhinos and a whole list of names. What do you say to that kind of thinking?
I am. Well, you know what? I will tell you. I'll answer it this way. When Ronna Romney has been attacked mercilessly lately, and when she got off the boat, we were there with her husband, and I asked, how do you stand up under all the horrific criticism? She says, you know what, I don't read it. And that's something I always knew, because when you get down in the mud and listen to some of the negative, it affects you emotionally and mentally, and it takes a long time to get over that. So I've just come to a point where I'm not going to read it anymore either, because I like to focus on the positive. We like to make positive change. Like I said, everybody knows where we stand. My husband Ken is a constitutional historian. Our whole house is filled with law books. He knows what he's talking about. So we want to be effective in a positive way for positive solutions, but not personal denigration of people. That's just not right.
I found and I want listeners to know we're talking about a very small slice of the popular when we're talking about the negative side of this.
Right.
But what I found frustrating, and I don't know if either one of you, I know you two were very busy, but as I went through the weekend, I would post a picture here and there on Facebook, which I use extensively, both for the show and for myself politically. And also my store Renegade River, so I lean pretty heavy towards social media. What I found very frustrating is I could put on a beautiful picture of a scenery, and I would have a handful of people with the same extreme negative echo chamber that you're going, oh, stop it. They get to where they weigh so much, but in my mind they make themselves irrelevant when everything that comes out of their mouth is negative.
I flat out delete those, any negative commentary. I delete. Our pictures are not for a political platform. They're there to show the mood and the spirit of the event and those who attended. And if you want to say something great, that's fine. But negative commentary, I just delete. And I'm adamant about that. And if people use our pictures, we don't allow that either. That it's all copyrighted. So all our pictures are for personal use. Anyone can use them. If it's a picture of you, that's yours, but it's not for somebody else to use for their sinister motives.
We try to provide the photographs as a way to bring folks inside the gate, so to speak.
Yep.
And you have a lot of folks who sit outside the gate, and they're trying to reach for the grape, sort of like the fox in the fable, and it becomes a sour grape reach for them. So they tend to fault others for what they, for some reason, refuse to accomplish, and they they relish this negative retort. They live with a negative retort, and they don't understand. We as Republicans, as political activists, are confronting a system that's broken. And you're not going to cure the system by standing outside and throwing rocks. You have to be involved, as we all are, as grassroots activists. And just like Tip and Neil said, it's local. It's in your backyard. If you don't step up in your backyard and then move forward throughout the state, you're going to have a very narrow view of things. And we provide our photographs, show people that this is a statewide phenomenon. The party's not just in your county. It's not just in your district. It's the state of Michigan. Nearly now, with the resurgence of a population, close to 10 million people are involved. And what our elected officials do at the municipal, the county, the state, and federal level affects us all. And we try to share that perspective with everybody, and photographs are a good way. As Darlene says, we've had polite disagreements with with some of the political decisions made in Lansing and also in D.C., and we voice that.
Sure.
But when it comes down to it, you have to communicate. You have to share. You have to share your agreement and the positives of the agreement, and we move on from there.
To me, Ken, it's a civic duty, not it's a duty to voice opposition to these things. On the other hand, it's childish to turn it into a personal attack against whoever it is you're disagreeing with on a given issue.
Well, and you know, we volunteer our time, and it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of work, but it's a work of love, and we get called terrible names, just and we're not out there to do anything but try and do good. I'll tell you one of the some of the politicians that we've met, like Brian Kelly, he's just a wonderful man, and
right.
He's all heart. And Mike Shirkey, we have had huge differences with him, but he is a gentleman all the time and every time. He's
I'll tell you about Mike Shirkey. He's been a guest on this show, and it's kind of an interesting thing because in the middle of the Michigan Medicaid expansion program, I was and remain vehemently opposed to it. But my compliment to him is him and I couldn't have been on opposite ends of that issue. But to his credit, he came on the show knowing that he was stepping into the proverbial lion's den on that particular issue. And I think Jim Riley and I both walked away from that interview still disagreeing with him, but with a lot of respect for him. Is that a true statement there, Jim?
I would say 100%, yeah. And I think that's really what this entire conversation is all about, is when you have an opportunity to meet with these people, and you may disagree on many, many issues, but when you speak with them, you find that there is an awful lot in common, and they are more than willing to hear both sides of the issue.
There's way more in common than in disagreement.
Another thing that we learned with Mike.
Mike is standing tall against the power regulators,
right.
The power monopolies. So on one hand, we agree that the Medicaid expansion was a very sour note, a very wrongful use of public policy. But on the other side of the coin, here Mike is standing up against one of the largest employers in his region, which is Consumer Power, for they favor monopoly. And here Mike is making a stand against that very monopoly to try to give us a free marketplace for our power generation. So these elected officials make decisions we disagree with, but on the other hand, they'll make decisions we can wholeheartedly support. And like you say, if you stand out there and continue to throw rocks, you're not going to gain anything. But rocks bouncing back on you.
Listen, Ken and Darlene, I've got to take us to a break, but can you stay through for just a few more minutes with us after the break?
Sure.
That'd be great. Folks, we'll be right back.
And now back to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com and your host, Mike Hewitt.
Listen, folks, if you're just tuning us in, Jim Riley is riding shotgun with me, and Darlene and Ken Ration are on the line with us, and we're talking about taking photographs in the general feeling of the Republican Party in the state of Michigan, and indeed specifically across the state of Michigan. So welcome back, you two.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hey, tell us, one of the things you said early on, Darlene, in the first segment, was that different areas in the state of Michigan have a different feel and different needs, and they see these issues differently. What were you getting at?
Well, in fact, our lieutenant governor and I were talking, and I said, by taking photos, you get out of one particular area, and you go all over the state, and it's like Brian said, before he became involved in politics, he used to say, I hope he doesn't mind me quoting him, but he used to say that, well, how can people think that way? And then when he became involved in politics and started going all over the state, he says, well, now I understand. Because they have a different philosophy, they have different geography, different concerns. Out here in farmland, it's more agriculture. You have differences in the 90th.
In your urban districts.
Sure.
We have a very large state.
Right, we do.
some people really don't appreciate the geographical size. And with that geographical size goes a geographical philosophy. A political philosophy is what it morphs down to. You have the urban needs of Motown, of Flint, of Pontiac, of Jackson, of Kalamazoo, of Grand Rapids. Then you have the country. We're out here in the middle of nowhere, thank God, in a very countrified farm district. And we look at things a little differently. And the perspective you share with others, such as yourself in a moderate district, here we're a very conservative district. We go up north to the Upper Peninsula, and you have a mix of both in the same neighborhood.
I think a lot of times, Ken, what motivates that difference in ideology is how folks receive their money. So if you go up north and you think it's rural, so you think it's going to be conservative, and you find that, to your point, it's a very solid mix of union leftism and traditional conservatism, but it comes to how those folks are working, and it's mining and unionized mines, etc. And so I say that because people vote with their wallet is just a true cliche.
Yes, it is, and again, it goes back to the ruralness here in our farming community, and most of the counties north of us, just to the bridge. Where
what county are you in, Ken?
We're in Ionia County, the lands of no zoning.
So I can build a house any old way I want to.
Generally, as a rule, you can.
That sounds like America, man. I miss it.
Yeah, it is. Only Houston and Ionia County are the two non-zoned geographical regions that I know of in the whole republic.
Wow. Houston is the fastest-growing city in the United States and will soon supplant Chicago as the third largest city in the country, too. So, geez, oh, Pete, deregulation.
When you don't have to go in front of a planning board to build your building and ask permission from the local politician, you're back to the grassroots. Build your log cabin and expand from there.
Just kind of let me take 20 seconds to tell you a short story for listeners. I helped this fella transition from a little dinky country dealership to a larger, and when I say larger, it was still small by standard, to a larger automobile dealership, but brand new. He wanted me to, as a consultant kind of employee, to help transition from the country culture that his store had for 2 generations up to this modern, high-tech, etc. And one of the things that I ran into during the building process of that building blew my mind. They had, because of the square footage of the building, the local board said we had to have 73 trees. Not 74 or 72, there had to be 73 trees. And we had the liberty of picking one of 3 tree species. And I thought, oh my goodness, is this still America that we're in?
I know.
I thought that was just absolute over the top. So I apologize for taking us off path, but whenever I think of zoning or these uber regulation, a bunch of pointy-headed people with, and shame on me because I'm being what I don't like, but it's how I feel about it. I think, why do you think you know more about this than the person that's going to mortgage and owe their whole life to build it? So that's my little side note. Sorry about that.
That's one of the reasons we step up. The photographs that we provide are a way to share that you can approach these folks, so we can try to disengage these pointy-head people that try to regulate death.
Do you folks, before we run out of time with the interview, do you folks do professional photography for a living also?
Not as a rule, but when some folks approach us, yes.
I'm asking because I'm wanting to find out if there's a place that listeners could see some of your work. Since some folks have been listening to us for quite a while now and must be wondering what we're talking about.
Well, we have a like page, Darken Photography, and DAR capital KEN, Darken for Darlene and Ken.
I like it.
And I've been so busy. I put the photos on there where they're watermarked, but the photos on my private page for friends only are just the pictures we take. And when I'm done with processing all the photos, then I put them on the Darken Photography page and it's got our phone number and everything on there.
Reach out there.
Yes.
Very, very, very nice. When you're doing pictures, do anybody ever push back on you? Like, don't take our picture, or I don't like that one, I don't want it used, or anything like that?
Oh, you know what? Sometimes it's very rare, but sometimes they do, and we respect that.
Sure.
And sometimes we'll take a photo, and they don't like it, so they'll send me a message. I don't like it, so I delete it. I mean, we're there to make everyone look good, and if someone feels it's not a flattering picture of them, then we take it down.
Just so everyone doesn't think this is a cotton candy interview, was there any negatives you walked away from with Mackinac Island?
Not one. Not one.
Yeah, my only critique of it, folks, is I thought that it was outrageously expensive. If I had any negative at all, that would be it.
Well, yeah,
that wasn't the Republican Party, by the way. That's the island. It was just my vantage point. So,
yeah, the island itself is cloistered. It's a very high-end tourist recreational area, but as a venue for the MIGOP, we've been up there for 3 cycles, and the venue itself, expenses aside, I think is a great get together because it brings people from all across the state into one place for 2 to 3 days of political fellowship.
But I will tell you, I've been all over the country, and it's no more expensive than any other tourist.
Cheaper than Chicago.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Cheaper. And my daughter lives there.
Speaking of taxes and regulation.
Yeah. I go to Chicago, and I would have spent twice as much as I did at Mackinac.
Yeah, no, you're right about that, Darlene. Now that you bring that up, because even on the boat ride on the way back, the ferry boat ride, I had that exact same dialogue. I spent a little over $1,000 in 2 days, and that's about what I would have spent if I would have went to Chicago.
You spent $2,000.
No,
wow.
a little over 1,000.
Oh, okay.
No, and I thought I lived pretty Spartan. I did.
But that's what you're going to spend on any vacation, and that's how we look at it.
Oh no, that's right.
But to us, it's better than a vacation because there's everybody from all over the state and friends. I mean, we have just met the best people.
Right.
We've gotten involved in politics. It's just so different than what we ever thought. We got involved as political activists. We're going to fight, but it's just really turned to be a lot different and 1,000 times different and 100 times better than I ever could have dreamt.
Listen, I got to tell you, if I were to try to sum up why I wanted you two on, it was exactly that perception you just shared. I think folks that are not involved think the negative, and that's all they do is argue and they fight, and everything you just said, Darlene. But that's just true. Is truly not it. That's not what it's like to be engaged in the grassroots of. And I don't know anything about the Democratic Party, but I got to assume that people in general that get involved probably feel good about it.
Yeah, and we've met a few Democrats, and politics aside, they're great people. Am I right?
No, I avoid them.
That's too funny. Listen, folks, I very much appreciate what you do and you sharing some time with us this morning on the air.
Well, thanks for asking us to call in.
I appreciate it. You two have a great day. Folks, we're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back with the Enigma Report.
And back to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And now it's that part of the show we all look forward to, the Enigma Report.
He's getting better at that every week.
You know what? I got some serious thoughts that you're practicing on the weekends, just to get this down.
Listen, folks,
I'm loving it.
If you could see the expression on his face when he's doing the Enigma Report, it's
there is a little happiness.
Oh, man, it's almost, it's like pure raw delight. It's an enigma within itself.
But we do need to move on to the Enigma Report.
Let's get enigmatized.
Enigmatized. Love it.
Today I want to talk about the President, the Pope, and Main Street. Got a place you want to start with the President, maybe?
Well, not really. Tell us.
Listen, I am not a fan of the Pope. Okay. But I'm going to have to try to back into this to cover what my rationale is. Having said that, I still recognize the fact that he sits by vote, by the way, at the head of the Catholic Church, and there's a lot of faiths within the Christian community at total that are not Catholic but recognize him as the head of their church, and so I have reverence for the position, but not for this particular Pope. And all of that aside, I watch on the news as the Pope's airplane circles the airport, trying to buy time for the president and the vice president to show up. And I think, forget what I think about the Pope and the politics that we're going to get into. I thought it was absolutely a slap in the face to Catholics and all of those churches that recognize the Pope as the head of their church, for the president to lollygag around and get there when he was in goodwill. And to me, it's just disrespect. The enigma to that is, in my mind, is that it wasn't a shock. They didn't get a phone call and say, "We're almost there, will you meet us?" This is well rehearsed and staged, and they told us for days on end that it was the biggest security in forever. And he gets there when he's in goodwill, and I don't get that. Jim, what say you?
Well, I don't, of course, know what's going on in the minds of either of those two gentlemen, but you're dealing, the Pope may be a religious leader, but he is in fact a leader. He is a politician. As you said, he was elected. Make no mistake with any religious leader or otherwise, there are egos involved. The fact that President Obama chose to go out and meet the Pope at the airport, that's a very unique event. That is giving the Pope some higher level of respect than he would, for instance, another head of state, someone who showed up in the Oval Office in the Rose Garden.
So, do you think that's deserving, or was it?
Whether it's I don't know if it's deserving, but I would say that
I asked that because you seem to have a little bit of pushback on the fact that he gave him that higher level, even though he took it away by arriving.
Well, my thought would be this: it's for whatever reason, this has become all the news. I mean, really, the entire weekend. If you looked at any of the news shows, all of the news this morning is about. As a matter of fact, as we speak, I believe the president is speaking about this meeting with the Pope. So this is big news. Any leader is going to take advantage of it. What did kind of surprise me, though, was that there's gamesmanship going on. And as you said, this was not something that was, sprung upon the president. They knew when he was going to arrive exactly.
It was gamesmanship. And being late was gamesmanship.
And exactly. So it really, anyone who is going to analyze this closely knows either the president and the people around him were just inept boneheads and got to meet the Pope a little late.
That's pretty possible.
It is possible, but I think it's more likely that, in fact, they wanted the Pope to wait for the president. And that's a poor way to begin what's expected to be a conversation. If you think that the people who are advising the Pope and the Pope himself, if you think that they're not aware of this, you're fooling yourself. So it's interesting. Clearly, the president wants to have benefits that will accrue from this very public meeting. I would wonder how the Pope feels about it. I doubt he's going to say anything, but certainly we will see things down the road.
When I watched the Pope, which is the lion's share on my little 3-item list today, when I watched the Pope, who to me, you identified him as a politician. I think you're right.
But he's a religious leader. But he got there by virtue of being elected, by being a politician.
Sure, certainly. That's an exactly true thing. I put on Facebook yesterday, the closer I listen to Pope Francis, the more he sounds just like another uber-left political ideologue. How very disappointing he is. And listen, I genuinely feel that way. I'm not assaulting him as a person, but I don't. When I watch him use that as a political stand, a political platform, and it's an example of that. While he's in Cuba meeting with Fidel Castro, must have been right after Fidel washed his hands to get the blood off of them. While that meeting is going on, you've got people being beaten and jailed because they wanted to communicate with the Pope. And at the same time, the Pope goes on to lecture the United States for our human rights violations, and never commented on the fact that those people wanted to communicate to him for their own human rights that they've been violated by the Cuban government. I watched that whole scene. To me, that's an absolute enigma why people in total are not highly insulted at the concept that I'm standing here in Cuba and I'm going to ignore that there are people outside the gate getting beaten right now, and I'm going to rag on the United States of America for its human rights violations. I try to add that up. It doesn't add up. It's an enigma to me that he's able to have this leap of common sense into just political ideology.
Well, I've always felt, and of course, this is the issue that we have with Islam also.
Yeah, exactly.
Religion ought to stick to religious issues, saving the souls of people. Once religion branches out into politics, and of course, there is an overlap, certainly when you have the poor and things of this sort, but we do see we do see the Pope who's declared himself an expert on the science of climate change and global warming and many other things. It sadly, the Pope is a very successful politician in getting himself elected. He has not been very successful in expanding the Catholic Church's reach throughout the world. We know, certainly even here in Muskegon County, Catholic churches are closing. The numbers of folks who identify with the Catholic Church are shrinking tremendously. And I would suspect part of that reason is because many Catholics and those who might consider becoming a Catholic are viewing the Catholic Church less as a saver of souls and more of a large political business.
You may exactly be right with that. When you look at the things that he's addressed that are all, like the Cuban thing, like our southern border, like what he's been talking about in Europe. And I've got very dear friends that are Catholic, and in fact, 2 of them are Catholic priests. They'll say, Mike, you're taking these things out of context. This is their argument back. They'll say he's neither espousing a conservative or a liberal platform, that if I actually read all of his writing, that I'll find that he's trying to open communication. Maybe that's true, but everything that I've read says it's not. That all of the issues he's taken on are all not just left-wing, uber left-wing, hardline socialist, wealth distribution things. And again, I'm not Catholic, so I approach this from an outside looking in layman, but my first reaction is the same as it is to Barbara Streisand or any of these people that want wealth distribution. Let's start with yours. So when I look at the wealth of the Catholic Church, and I've got the head of it asking for global wealth distribution, I say the same thing. Let's start with yours. They're sitting on endless amounts of money and hidden treasures and historical documents that nobody can see the light of day of. And I'm thinking, and you're lecturing me on wealth distribution? No kidding. Well, I wrestle with that a lot, Jim.
There were further lectures in the last week or so about who should be taking care of all of these refugees that the Europeans basically invited in. And the papacy is so surrounded by dull-headed mouthpieces that the Pope, or at least his voice person, publicly said, "Oh, we are really part of this, and we want Europe to do the right thing and take these folks in and take care of them." So that the Vatican agreed very publicly to take in 2 of these refugees.
Very nice.
2 of those refugees.
I don't know the ratio of the size.
They were proud as punch, apparently.
Well, the Vatican is a city and not a. I don't know the ratio of geography.
2 people. You could have put 2 people in the back of his gigantic jet.
I got to tell you now, this is a little bit backhanded of me when I look back at Obama, though, because I blame the entire Syrian crisis directly, not indirectly, not kind of, sort of, 100% directly. I put at the door of President Obama. I think his meandering, embrace your enemy and forget your ally, and can't figure out which one of our enemies on the ground there we want to arm with weapons. So let's give this group one because we think someday they'll be good. Let's give this group one because someday they're going to be good. When I look at what he's doing, meanwhile ignoring the Kurds, we've had the president of the National Assembly of the Kurdish National Assembly of Syria on here several times. He can't get any attention from the White House. Meanwhile, we're arming Al-Qaeda, literally. And so when you look at Syria and say, why are millions of people running out of there? First off, I don't blame them. But then the only way to find a cure to it is look what caused it. we have got to have a new president in the United States of America.
Well, we've got to have a president in the United States of America who does not tell us that they will continue the same policies that the current president has. And that's, again, you know, we just had this discussion with folks up at Mackinac with the Republican meetings as opposed to the Democrat meetings. There is a difference between the two political parties, and it saddens me sometimes when we see votes and disappointment among those on the conservative side of the ledger. But there is quite often we miss the point that President Obama has very proudly and loudly said what he stands for, and he's followed through. The Republican Party, generally
I noticed that when my deductible went up to $3,000, he did follow through.
Well, that's right, and the Republicans generally disagree with many of these policies, and in particular the Syrian policy. But when push comes to shove, we don't hear them proudly and loudly saying we disagree. Now, there are some, certainly like Ted Cruz and others, but this to me is the big sadness in American politics is time and again, if you talk to people, probably not those listening to this show today, but if you talk with people about the two parties, you will hear the same phrase, oh, they're all a bunch of crooks. They're all the same. Why even bother to vote? And that is something that it's a communication issue. Earlier, you mentioned the communication via the internet and social media and things of that sort. We are getting better at that. And by we, I mean the Republican Party, but we're nowhere near to be close to the what the Democrats have. We've got to get that message out.
Listen, let me take my last 3 minutes to talk about what's coming on October 1st. It's the Michigan Main Street sales tax that evidently, this is one of those points, by the way, where I vehemently disagree with some of the folks on my side of the aisle on a particular topic. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Main Street Protection Act, I think is what it was called, designed to protect small retailers or retailers in general in the state of Michigan from internet sales from out-of-state companies.
No, from competition is what it was.
From competition. Now listen,
competition.
Here's the funny part. What's got me going on this is I bought an item the other day, $399. Then I paid on the internet. And then I paid an additional $23.94 in sales tax to the state of Michigan. And that's in advance of the October 1st Main Street thing. And evidently the company that I bought it for has got a warehouse or something in the state of Michigan, which makes it so they're obligated to pay already. But not wanting to get into the thicket of the details in 2 minutes, what I find fascinating as a retailer is that my paying that $24 in sales tax didn't help my business one bit. I just spent $23.94. When they paint this as Main Street protection, it's a lie. I can't find any other way to describe it. It's marketing 101. What it is another revenue stream, no more and no less. When I look at competition from a company out of state, I know what process they go through because I sell to other states. So if you were sitting in Colorado or somewhere else and you bought a pocket knife from my website, I have to pay to have it packaged. I've got to physically take it to a post office or deal with UPS or deal with FedEx. I have expenses that go into that. That offsets any competition. You're going to either pay for the shipping or the sales tax if you buy it from me direct. The argument is flat. It makes no sense other than we're going to get taxed some more. I, as a Main Street retailer at Renegade River, I greatly resent it. What say you?
I would agree 100%. Let's make this clear. This is where Republicans have problems. They tell us that we should live within our means. They've recently told us if we didn't pass an enormous tax increase that, in fact, the bridges would collapse and children would die. Tax, new ones coming in seems like every freaking month.
That was the riddle of the roads a week or two ago when there got road construction absolutely everywhere, but we haven't solved the budget crisis for the lack of roads yet. Some of those things are just mind-boggling, but this Main Street tax doesn't protect a single business. It brings money into the coffers.
Let's talk about that in greater detail because I think that's something that maybe